It is my pleasure, really my great pleasure, to welcome you to this special edition of Professor Baker's American Government class. His students, those of you in the room who are in his class today, as you know, you're joined by some students from the Eagleton Institute's Youth Political Participation Program, and because this is also what we call their Pizza and Politics event for the fall, everyone else gets the opportunity to enjoy a slice along with the program. So enjoy, we're delighted to provide it. Also joining us are many non-students who still, I guess we all are lifelong learners. I certainly count myself among them, still learning about American government and politics and the way our nation is organized and run or not run, as the case may be. Our thanks to Professor Baker for allowing us to bring these audiences together to hear from a practitioner with a very distinctive political voice, one who knows the subject inside out, as you will hear, from many years of experience, astute observation, and the temperament of someone who calls it as he sees it. Before introducing our speaker, I want to make a special thanks to Mrs. Betty Wold Johnson, who is a friend of the Eagleton Institute, for helping to ensure that students have an opportunity to hear and learn from serious, well-respected leaders about public service and governance. We're delighted that she could be here today with us, and we thank her for making the senator's visit possible. Thank you. Senator Alan Simpson is a native, a lifelong resident of Cody, Wyoming. He comes from a family of lawyers. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Law from the University of Wyoming, served in the Army, and then he returned to the university to complete his JD, his law degree. After a short stint as Wyoming's Assistant Attorney General, he joined the family law firm in Cody, and he practiced there for 18 years, during which time he remained active in the community, in civic life in the community, and in state activities in Wyoming, and he served for 10 years as city attorney. But it turns out that there was another family business. They often go together, and in this case, very effectively, and that business was and is politics. I'm not sure you call it a business, but for the moment. The senator's father served both as governor and senator from Wyoming, so it's no surprise that when Alan Simpson began his own political career, and that was back in 1964 by winning a seat in the Wyoming state legislature, he followed in a family tradition. He served in the legislature in the state for 13 years. Then in 1978, he was elected to the United States Senate, where he served for 3 terms, or translated, that would be 18 years. His leadership roles there included Assistant Majority Leader and Chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. He is a veteran. He might mention that during his talk. Many more people discovered Senator Simpson in 2010 when, along with former White House Chief of Staff Erskine Bowles, he became half of a very famous bipartisan duo who led President Barack Obama's National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform, offering their tough prescription for our economy. Since leaving the Senate in Washington, Senator Simpson has also been a lecturer at the University of Wyoming, and for 2 years, director of the Institute of Politics at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. He also practices law, serves on numerous boards, nonprofit boards. He's written a book, and he's in, you won't be surprised after you've heard him, if this is your first time, he is in considerable demand as a speaker. Something I didn't know and get great pleasure in sharing, Senator Simpson has a musical career as well. He has worked with the renowned composer and conductor John Williams, performing his suite from The Reivers, William Faulkner's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, in multiple locations. He's also narrated The Lincoln Portrait, Gustav Holst's The Planets, a symphonic film, and Sergei Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf with various orchestras. All of this biographical information doesn't even begin to describe the eminently quotable, always honest, and rarely predictable speaker with us today. It's my very great honor to offer a warm New Jersey and Rutgers welcome and to introduce you to Senator Alan Simpson.
Approach there. Anyway, Ruth, of all the introductions I've ever had, that was the most recent. I tell you, they need a railing there. That could be the end of any speaker, right there on that edge. Well, pleasure to be here. It's been a lot of fun. I visited with students last night, and good to see Ross Baker. And Ruth has been very kind, and all of the staff. And it's good to be back. It's not my first time here because Alan Rosenthal was a dear pal. And we linked up clear back in the 70s. And the oil and the glue and the grease that kept that friendship was humor. Humor is the universal solvent against the abrasive elements of life. Don't forget that one. And let me tell you, you need it in politics because politics is barbaric and it's a contact sport. I loved it. I could give as good as I got, and you need to do that. But you need the softening agents of life in politics. You need beauty and art and theater and books, and I always had that pleasure. But Alan Rosenthal was joy and life and vigor and spirit, and he was also an impish. You never knew what the hell he was up to. That's why we enjoyed each other so much. One day he pulled out a fake black mustache and a hairpiece. I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He said, "Just looking different." Well, I said, "You look different anyway. Why the hell would you need it?" He didn't like that. He was savvy, and he was a patriot, and he was my dear, and I wish I could have been here, but I sent along a little tape of it. Well, it's chilly here. It's colder than Christian Charity outside, and when they say it's 28 here, we're in Chicago the other day at the Axelrod. I said, 28? Well, I'll get out and walk at 28 in Wyoming. It was 27 below wind chill. I said, we don't have any moisture in Wyoming. We don't even know what that is. But let me tell you just quickly, politics is on every lip. The word politics comes from the Greek, like the word democracy itself. And poly meaning many, and ticks meaning blood-sucking insects. And how about the two guys in the penitentiary in another state, and one turned to the other, he said, "The food was better here when you were governor." I didn't use that one in Illinois. But I also I really want to thank Betty Wold Johnson, who I enjoyed breakfast with this morning. A very vibrant and wonderful lady, and she leaned over and said, "You got room here for an old lady?" I said, "You're not an old lady, you're young and smart and marvelous." And there she is, and she's a dear. And thank you for your part. Erskine Bowles, John has reminded me that. People don't know who Erskine Bowles might be. He was chief of staff of Bill Clinton. And he was the last guy on earth to balance the budget in 1996. And do you know how he did that? By working with Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay and Dick Armey. If you tell people that, you see, you're supposed to. Nowadays, The game is very clear. They'll say, who was on your commission? I mean, who were the nuts that voted for this package, which hurt everyone? Well, there were 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 1 independent. 60% of the commission voted for it. And it ranged from Dick Durbin, and you'll say Dick Durbin voted for this. Say, Dick Durbin, that commie from Illinois, you know. Yeah. And then Tom Coburn voted for it. Coburn, that Neanderthal from, you know, Oklahoma. That's your country today. Just identify somebody. Harry Reid, I hate him. McConnell, I hate him. Pelosi, she's a jerk. Boehmer, I mean, that's your country. You did those little choices. That's how that works. Interesting stuff. So anyway, we did our work, and you can imagine when you get a vote of Dick Durbin and Tom Coburn, you've done something right. And afterwards, even Andy Stern of the Service Workers Union said, I wish I'd voted for it. A good egg. They were all good people. Well, Erskine, a very savvy, warm, smart, and wise guy, a real find in this present wasteland of sensible, effective, and respected public figures. So he did the numbers and I do the color, but I can share with you some of this. So hang on tight, and we'll come to questions. We would just sit down after, as I say, leaving the witness protection and say, pull up a chair. We don't do BS or mush, and we'll tell you where your country is, because you're not hearing it. And we heard it. We did 8 months of work. We borrow $500 million every day. Every buck we spend, we borrow 16 cents. We owe about 18 trillion bucks right now. It was 17.3 a while ago, but it's on automatic pilot. And please, please get the difference between the deficit and the debt. Everyone's tickled to death that the deficit is going down. So are we. So should everybody, but the debt is on automatic pilot. And there's no stopping it because politicians won't stop it. So, and then add this, that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae, pension guarantee funds, and all those beautiful things out there, the unfunded liability in those things is 62 trillion. Mm-hmm. So nobody knows what a trillion is, so it doesn't make a damn difference what you say. So I use this one, brilliant, this is brilliant. I say, the Big Bang theory of the universe, without getting into religion, of course. And you say that happened 13 billion, 800 million years ago, the spinning off of the planets and the sun and the moon. And that isn't even close to a trillion, and we owe 18 of those babies. Now that's what a trillion is. So let's go to the first one. Well, let's go to the one that everybody often talks about is defense. Don't touch precious defense, for the God's sake, we'll haul out the arm. I am a veteran, don't throw anything. You will when I'm through. We said to the Defense Department people who testified, well, how many contractors do you have in the Defense Department? And they said, well, it's quite a range. We said, what is it? They said between 1 million and 10 million. So you often see people that you know, what do you do? Well, I'm a contractor with the Defense Department in procurement. Oh, what do you do? Well, I'm a contractor with the and that's it. You don't get much more. I'm an education contractor with, oh, I see. What do you do? Just a contract. Let me tell you, gang, it is shot through with big bucks. And we asked for an audit. Conrad, Democrat, asking for an audit, said, it's impossible to audit the Defense Department. That can't be done. Well, he said, well, that's too bad. We'd love to have done that. So then you dig into it. And here's some things that are rather puzzling. These are my notes, hand drafted. They're quite an array here. You wouldn't believe it if you saw it. And so I said, well, I'm a veteran, and how about the TRICARE, which is a health care program of veterans? Oh, they said, well, what about it? I said, well, there are only 2.2 million people in that. If I'd stayed another few years in the reserves, I would be under TRICARE. Nobody knows where it is, but I'll tell you, it's 2.2 million people, and many, many deserve it. But I met people who have not been on active duty. They've been in the reserves or the National Guard. Brigadier generals. I knew what they are. I saluted them. Well, let me tell you, they have this health care program, and the premium is $540 a year, and no copay, and 85% of it goes to their dependents instead of them. Try to mess with that one. We'd go to Gates and Panetta and say, what the hell, get a handle on that one. Say, you kidding? Life's too short. I'm going to get torn to bits by the VFW and the American Legion, of which I'm a member of both, VFW, a lifetime. So you move on. And then you say, do you know that there are 64 Department of Defense schools in America? No, don't know that. And they're all a bus ride from the public school? No, I didn't know that. They're overseas, and they should be. That's where the dependents should be and be educated. Okay. They all have a superintendent, principals, and teachers, and the cost per student is $51,000 a year for less than 20,000 students. Try to change that one. You'll get ripped by the NEA and the veterans and the military. Just another lovely part of our work. Try this one. There are 200 commissaries still in the United States, all run by the DOD, and they were there for a recruiting device. They're not used by the recruits, they're used by the old coots like me, where you can buy your scotch for less and your lettuce for less, and they cost a bundle of money. And they are all a walking step from a grocery store, as we used to call them in my day. This stuff will get you in a lot of trouble, what I've just said. Someone will come up to me afterward, excuse me, this is a rude thing to do, but better than dribbling it on the podium. And so they'll say, you know, I don't think you're patriotic. I said, I am patriotic. I just want to tell you about guys who served less than a year and don't know a mortar tooth from either end and never left Camp Beetle Bailey, who draw every single benefit a combat veteran draws. I don't think that's right. I think combat veterans from combat theaters should be write the ticket. That'll get you in a lot of trouble. And then, of course, there's the GI Bill. I enjoyed that. And I didn't take the GI loan because I could afford not to do that. You don't dare talk about means testing when you're talking about veterans. You can be a veteran who stood on a dock in Vietnam for half a day, who now at this age has cancer or BO or gas or heart attack, and it is assumed that they got that from Agent Orange. That's called a presumptive disease, and it's costing us a fortune. That's the stuff we get to deal with. Everything we touched had to do with emotion, fear, guilt, or racism. This is how you pass or kill a bill: emotion, fear, guilt, or racism. Fortunately, we had a damn good group of people who just kept listening. Let's go to health care. Okay, forget what you call it. Forget all the nastiness. It won't be repealed. The House will vote 7 more times to repeal it, but the Senate will not vote to repeal that. They'll vote to do something with it and deal with the exchanges and the subsidies and piecemeal try to make it work. They have no choice as Republicans. They can't be the party of no anymore. They have to make something work. But let's tell you why it can't work. Every bit of cost containment in it is down the road, ladies and gentlemen, and no politician will touch it down the road. Take the doc fix if you want to grab one. Under the so-called SGR, doctors were to be limited. When it came, oh God, you can't do that. Here comes the AARP, medical, you name it. The silver-haired legislators, the Pink Panthers, the Gray Panthers, you can't touch that. Well, so we just staggered forward. And so what you have to look at with health care is this. Here's the reality. You're never going to correct something in the future because the politicians will not do it because of the power of the groups, and they've proven that beautifully with the doc fix. It's been 15 doc fixes. So here it is. You're going to take care of a pre-existing condition of a 3-year-old who lived to be 60. One person in the U.S. weighs more than the other 2. That's a statistic, sad enough. 10,000 people a day are turning 65. There are people who choose to do booze, drugs, and tobacco, and if you think they're going to the wellness program next week, the drinks are on me, and you're going to pay for them, and I'm going to pay for them. Then you got to do something with lawyers. I'm a trial lawyer, and you got to do something with tort reform. It's like a stab in the chest. But you have to do something to avoid defensive medicine. You got to do something with doctors. They just can't continue to drip on the system and grip it. You got to do something with providers who make a little item for 80 cents and sell it to the feds for $8. You got to do something with hospitals who keep 2 sets of books instead of 1, or keep 3 sets of books instead of 1, so you can see how much to get out of the federal or state treasury. And you got to do something with the guy who could buy this auditorium, gets a heart operation for $200,000 and never gets a bill. And you're saying you can't fuel the Harry Truman in the Gulf? And you can't give a hot breakfast in Afghanistan? Ladies and gentlemen, that's just bullshit. So don't, nobody ever claps when I speak. They're usually sitting there and they're thinking, wait till that son of a bitch gets back here in the back of the room. And they'll hand you a piece of paper. So I don't like to speak in public, so I give you this paper. You can look at it when you get in your car and you open it up and say, you rottens. Okay, now please. It's funny, but it's not. Did you hear that? Probably this woman I've been sleeping with for 60 years. But this, I won't do this. It's Ann Simpson. I'm going to wait. I don't know how to work these. Now wait. If you hit it twice and go to airline mode, and then this damn thing glumps. Here it is, airline mode. I pressed that. Pretty good. A lot of people laughed. Okay, now, that's health care. Now, let's go to Social Security. Well, the nastiest letters I have ever received were from people over 60. You son of a bitch. What have you done? I put in it from the beginning. And by God, I want it all out. I said, do you? How old are you? Well, I'm 83, and let me tell you, gang, I put it in $5 when I was 15, working in the Cody Bakery. And then I put in nothing when I worked in the summer because you had to make over $3,000, and nobody made over $3,000 in the summer. I put in when I was in the Army. You don't now, but you did then. In all my years of practice of law, I never put in over $874 a year. And then got stuck for $1,200 and $1,500 and $2,400 and on it went up into where it is now. That's real. When I left the Senate, a guy could get all of his back in the first 3.5 years of the benefit period plus 6%, which you don't get, but we thought we'd just add that for an illustrative purpose. Okay, why is this? Well, I tell you, it's an interesting system. It was set up when the average age of life was 63 and you could retire at 65. Now, Roosevelt knew something that the rest of us did not know. Now, the average age is 80 and you can retire at 62. Use your brain. This thing can't exist in its present form. Who is telling us that? The trustees of the system. Well, who borrowed the $2,200,000,000, stole it? I said, nobody. It's said in the law that if there were reserves, you put in gilt-edged treasuries and you took the money out and spent it for people in the United States. And when you want the money, you go pull it out and you put in and you take out those and you give them cash. That started in May of 2010, and this system right now is $200 billion in net deficit. What are we doing about it? Nothing. So we decided we would do something. And here's what we said. We got to make it solvent for 75 years. We have no choice. because the trustees are telling us that in the year 2033, it will pay out 23% less. And if any of you have in your pile of stuff a thing that calls scheduled benefits, throw it away. Because the law, pretty crafty when they did it, the law says you will get only the payable benefit. And the payable benefit in 33 will be 23% less, and that's the trustees telling that to us, who are Democrats and Republicans. Medicare will go broke in 2026, according to the trustees, unless you do something, get a handle on that, which we suggested doing in our report. And disability insurance will end next year. Period. Gone. Well, how will they replace it? They'll get into the Social Security system and tap that further, unless they want to go to the General Treasury, and that'll make it a little worse. Those are real figures. I can't help you get nasty. I can't help you throw things. That is the way it is. And how do you deal with people when they look at you and say, you're cheating us? I'll tell you who's getting cheated, those young people over there. Any young person is being totally deceived. My generation did this, and it's our obligation to get it out, and we're not doing it. So here's what we said about Social Security. We'll give the lowest 20%, 125% of poverty. That's for the lesser and the lost, and that's going to cost. We'll change the wages subject to the tax to 200,000 maybe plus, instead of 108,000 or 110,800, whatever it is. We'll change the bend points. That's inside baseball, but it makes it more progressive. And we recommended these various things. We go to a changed CPI, which is a very more honest description of inflation, which the president bought into and that we bought into. And the minute it came out, we were torn to bits by the VFW and the Legion and the AARP. So then we said another terrible thing. We said, let's take the retirement age. Don't forget, it's going to be 67 in 2027. Do you know that? That's in the law right now. We said, let's take it to 68 by the year 2050. So we can get in some kind of process to make this thing solvent. And the AARP, 38 million people bound together by love of airline discounts. and RV discounts and insurance discounts and chairs and stairways and erectile dysfunction ads. You have to believe that they are a marketing agency and they don't give a damn about their grandchildren, or they would do something, and they know what to do. Two tiny things. Go to the changed CPI and change the retirement age. You don't even have to do with the other messes. They won't do a lick. I've taken them on. I'll be glad to take anyone on, any forum about the AARP and what they do. Okay, tough stuff. And we can't get any of that done. But to think the president and all of us gave up because of the power. And then those AARP ads, it's usually a guy with a veteran's cap. He probably never left Camp Beetle Bailey. He's looking out of a couple of binoculars, look like the bottom of Japanese beer bottles. He's saying, we're watching you. You know, by God, you say. Yeah, come on. Somebody watch them, I'll tell you that. Well, I think I don't want to rant, so I could run down here a little, but let's see, I won't go into that one again. That would get me in a lot of trouble. Well, there. Now, as Dick Durbin said, where is the tipping point? There is a tipping point here. And the tipping point is very simple. The people who will have loaned us $20 trillion by the end of this decade, half of that's private, and your 401ks or your investments. Half of it is public, and half of that is China, going through its own turmoil. And if they get a little rockier, they'll say, we got a great idea. We want more money for our money. The tipping point is very clear when all of them get together, including the locals, the privates, the publics, and say, you have a dysfunctional government, you won't touch any of this stuff. You're addicted to debt, and we want more money for our money. And inflation will kick in. If you think it's going to stay at 2%, have another drink on me. It's going to go to historical levels of 5 or 6 and ruin a lot of good folks in the process. So when that happens, inflation kicks in and interest rates go up, guess who gets screwed? The little guy that everybody talks about day and night in this country, about the little guy, the lesser. Well, that's who's going to get it, because, ladies and gentlemen, the money guys will always take care of themselves. That's a proven fact. So there's your country. And I'm glad you had something to eat. Well, let me tell you, it is a pretty tough thing to watch, because I'll tell you, to me, the saddest thing is the greed of senior citizens. There's no such thing as shared sacrifice. Everybody comes up to us and say, we love what you're doing except for that one part, and that's their part, and they will die to protect that part. And so there we are, and it's interesting, frustrating, not much. I sleep well at night because I just go tell this story, and somebody will run out of here and say, where'd you get those figures? Well, go get them, because I don't miss a one of them. And we used to bring them up to speed every week. Had to, because of the people out in the audience saying, you know, I didn't like that at all. Especially what you said about those veterans. I said, great. Great. I knew veterans who were getting a green check after sticking a bayonet in a tree and putting their knee over it so they could put their knee out of joint and get a green check for the rest of their lives. How's that? So every time you tell me a horror story, I'll tell you one. But the worst part of it is the ones we use are true. So there is something you can do. Young people can get involved, and the next time you go to see your congressperson speak, and they get up and say, I know what this terrible problem is, and we're going to handle it, and I'm going to take care of it, and we're going to do it but we're not going to touch precious Medicare, precious Medicaid, precious defense, or precious Social Security. And then as an intellectual person from a college campus, you should get up and say, you, sir, or madam, are telling a terminological inexactitude. You lying son of a bitch. And that's exactly, I don't know how else to express it. I'm from Wyoming. I've given up nuanced language. So would Alan Rosenthal have given up nuanced language. There is something you can do. Get involved. You young people, take part or get taken apart. You're the suckers. You're stuck. You're the stuckies. So you can do something. You can join a group called The Can Kicks Back. www. The Can Kicks Back. They're tired of seeing the can kick down the road, and they're going to have to pick up the can. And there are Democrats and Republicans, young people, wonderful young people. Get involved with them. Just don't run around picking on carrying a standard or something. Get involved. Go run for the city council or the commission or whatever. And to show you I got my money where my mouth is, my wife and I did not like to see the Tea Party take over our county. Their principal effort was to get rid of the 16th Amendment, which is the income tax. I said, how do you replace the $1,100 billion bucks? They said, well, you get rid of Nancy Pelosi's aircraft and foreign aid and congressional pensions. That's a sparrow belch. The big stuff is entitlements and Social Security. So I ran for precinct committee man. I did that 45 years ago, and my wife ran for precinct committee woman, and we won. And we're going to start all over, because I'm not going to sit and watch people take away this government by using emotion, fear, guilt, racism, and being guided solely by their interest group of the day. The AARP, the ACLU, the NEA, the NRA. we're not members of organizations first, we're citizens for God's sake first, and if you've forgotten that, we're in for a hell of a lot of crap. So with that, I shall let you ask any questions you wish, of any kind. Yes. Yes, sir, the guy in the white shirt there.
And we're just going to ask folks to please come up and use the microphones.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that everyone can hear you, and also so that we can get you on film for our YouTube. And to the extent possible, students, we want to encourage you to come up first, please, and really be our first round of questions. Thomas, I will hand it off. Please also introduce yourself.
Do they have to come forward, you say?
Yes, we only have one mic.
You can't pass that around or anything?
I think it might be
Okay.
test my aerobic.
Okay, you're it, Randy. I know what you're doing. Okay. Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to talk with you, and very intellectually smart. And I'm Thomas Zavelli, and I'm a political science major here at Rutgers. My question for you is this. I know you place blame on a lot of different groups, and rightfully so. But the president is the buck stops, as Harry Truman once said, and I'm sure you know this, the buck stops with me. So President Obama, you need a true leader in the White House in order to get Congress, be able to work with Congress and get things done. In your opinion, are you a little bit disappointed with President Obama taking all the hard work that you and Erskine Bowles and others put together and him throwing it in the waste basket? Are you upset with him not taking more responsibility and working together with both the Congress, the House and the Senate to get some of these reforms through and done?
No, I really wasn't. I think Erskine was more disappointed than I was because he's a member of his party, but I knew he couldn't touch it. Because if he did, his base would have said, you know, wait a minute, you're talking about entitlement reform, buddy, and we elected you on the basis of not touching precious entitlements and hurting seniors and all the rest of the stuff that goes with that. And if you do that one, you're history. And I think there were many events like that where he couldn't possibly have embraced it. The Republicans didn't embrace it any better, or the Democrats. Everybody ran from it because it hit everybody. And it still does, but it's still out there. You don't hear much about it, but it's like a stink bomb in a garden party because it's only 67 pages long. It's written in English, uses phrases like going broke and shared sacrifice. And so I just think I'm not disheartened. It's all gone now because the deficit is going down. That's, as I say, terrific, but the debt continues to skyrocket and will not stop unless you deal with those two big items, which is the entitlements and Social Security. Yes.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm also a political science major. So what you described in terms of the commission that you had, Congress proposed in the same session to have a very similar commission that would put forth deficit reduction, and then the party that constantly runs on deficit and debt reduction, the GOP, they filibustered it. People who co-sponsored that bill ended up joining that filibuster.
This kid has been reading the right stuff. Go ahead.
And obviously, with the congressional districts drawn the way they are, and the fact that seniors are the ones who turn out to vote, particularly in midterms, there's really, from what I see, the way that it's structured now, it is impossible to get any member of any party really to seriously be able to push something forward, whether it be the Republicans, and I think that they've, full disclosure, I'm a Democrat, but the Republicans have been very reflexively against any tax hikes. I mean, President Obama had to, scream and chortle for some of the Bush tax cuts to expire, and obviously the Democrats refuse to touch any of the entitlements, but a lot of the Republicans probably wouldn't either because those are their base. So what would you how could you structurally address these issues? Because these realities aren't going away. How do you force them to deal with it?
Well, you read the report, which is exactly how to handle it. It's a structural defect, and we deal with it, but this gentleman is absolutely right. This baby came up as a legislative commission. It had 60 votes, or they wouldn't have brought it to the floor. It got to the floor, and 7 Republican sponsors voted against it. McConnell, McCain, can't remember the others. Down it went. And that's when Biden called me. He said, "Hal, I got a real deal for you here, co-chair of this committee." I said, "Thanks, Joe. That sounds great. Be a lot of fun." So Joe Biden, then I said, "Who's the co-chair?" And he said, "Erskine Bowles." And we went ahead and we visited with the president. He said, "I'll help you." But you know, when we gave our report, he left. He left on a trip. When we do anything, people leave on a trip. Doesn't matter what party they're in. So it's hard, and it's painful. But every day that goes, if we had done it in December of 2010, we would have saved about $400 billion already. But no, just let her ride. So the gentleman is correct, and people are going to ignore it until the tipping point comes. Come, please.
My name is Atif, and I'm a junior studying political science and economics. First of all, Senator, thank you very much for coming all the way to New Jersey. So my question is that previously Democrats and Republicans in Congress could get along with each other. They could go get dinner and be friends and talk politics and get something done. Why is it that to this day we see this hatred towards each other's ideals, no matter what? Like, to quote the lawsuit filed today against President Obama because he took executive action on immigration, which the 4 previous presidents have done before. So what has changed from your time to now where partisanship is at a record high?
Well, the year I was elected, there were 1/5 of us were brand new. There were 11 Democrats and 9 Republicans. Bill Bradley, Nancy Kassebaum, Carl Levin, Thad Cochran, all wonderful, Dave Pryor. And we used to meet together and talk about things and go to dinner together. Those days are gone forever because now you don't even have the distrust between parties, you have distrust in the parties. The coin of the realm was trust. And now you have a situation where Schumer's looking over Durbin's shoulder. You had Cantor looking over Boehmer's shoulder, ready to try to get in there. I mean, it's all a different game. It's not a game, it's hideous. And the worst thing is the case of Citizens United, which opened the floodgates, the obscene floodgates of money, which means that you are going to be on the tube all day long or on the phone and calling for money all day. You're not going to have time to visit with anybody, including your wife and children. You're going to be getting bucks. That's the worst case, and I'm a lawyer, it's the worst case I've ever seen or heard of coming from the Supreme Court in my lifetime, and it will have to have a constitutional amendment to correct it. Or else in the next presidential election, you're going to see some 1 or 2 guys put up $50 million to promote Rick Santorum or Michelle Bachmann. Now, that's what you're going to get. And boy, I tell you, you know, to me, that's not democracy. And the guy wants to give $5. He's not going to. He said, "What the hell did my $5 mean in this rig? Hell, go back to bed." Well, you're absolutely right. But it is. The comedy is gone, and it's nastiness, and it's intra-party. And McConnell and Reid in the Senate, of which I know best, are a couple of tyrants.
Good afternoon, Senator
How are you?
Simpson. Thank you very much for coming to speak here today. So we've seen, I'm sorry? Oh, my name is Parag Shande. I'm a senior here. So my question is, you were able to work with Erskine Bowles, who worked under a Democrat, but we've seen the gridlock between the parties today. Now, in the past midterm elections, the Republicans managed to take control of the Senate. Where do you see the relationship between President Obama and Congress going for the next 2 years?
I really believe that the Republicans have no choice if they're going to be leading, but to do some things and not be the party of no. The president has taken a big shot last night with the immigration issue. Don't forget, however, that his presidency, he could have been called the deporter-in-chief. More people were deported in his administration than ever by anybody's administration, and he had to get that off his back. I would have done the same, and he's done that to him. He's done that. But it doesn't do what it should do. There's no health care benefits for these people that come in. There are lots of things that we never did before. But I'll tell you one thing, McConnell was very quick to respond. He said, if the president thinks that by what he did means that the Republicans are just going to mess around for 2 years and never do immigration reform, that's a dream. They'll do that in the first 6 months. The Senate has already done a bipartisan immigration bill. The House didn't do it just so they could stick it to Obama. That's over. That fun and games is done. The president's legacy, go on with it. They'll do an immigration bill. It's all there in front of them. Legalization of some areas, farm worker programs, you know, path to citizenship, fines. I don't know why you want to fine, but more secure identifier. Reason our bill didn't work when Rodino and I did it, Peter Rodino of New Jersey, bipartisan. Reason it didn't work is because we had a more secure identifier in it. And it was called by the ACLU and Grover Norquist a national ID card. And that was a good way to just watch it. And then one guy got up and said it's going to be about tattoos and Nazi Germany. Well, you don't get far when the emotions flow like that. And now they're talking about retina scans and fingerprints. And I haven't heard anybody write anything about the slippery slope. God, it's wonderful to stay alive long enough to see it all. But anyway, they will do something. If he wants to do executive orders, he can do them all day long, and McConnell will figure out the machinery to blunt them all. Because he knows the game better than anybody since Robert Byrd.
Afternoon, Senator.
How do you do?
Doing good. I'm Derek. I'm a first year here. I'm studying philosophy, economics, and environmental policy. The past couple, I feel like my question is actually appropriate because we were getting into the relations with the political parties, and you mentioned that there's distrust within the Republican Party. Now, you know, of course, for the most recent years, the Republicans aren't working with the Democrats aren't working with the Republicans. One party controls one side of the House, another party controls the other side of the House, and it doesn't matter who's president because they're not getting anything done. But now to the election, since the Republicans control both parts of Congress, even if we get a Republican president around next election, will stuff actually get done, or will there be just a new rift coming about that will basically even prevent more work from getting done?
This young man has hit a nerve that you won't like. We had the presidency and the House and the Senate, my party. And in that period of time took the debt from 5 trillion to 11 trillion by fighting 2 wars on credit. And a pharmacy bill, I can walk into the pharmacy for God's sake, and they'll say you owe $10. I said, what is it really? Well, it's 220. I said, I want to pay the 220. I can afford to do that. And they say, oh God, don't come in here and screw everything up like this. That baby is eating a hole through America, regardless of your net worth or your income, and you're paying $15 for a. So you have hit it, and so we took it. We, with all the power in the world, took it from 5 to 11, and this president, has taken it from 11 to 18. So let's drop the blame and just try to move forward. And then I asked some of them, why in the hell why didn't the president veto this? Well, he didn't want to embarrass the Senate by vetoing a product that they put out, and we didn't want to embarrass him by putting something up that would cause him to veto. I said, how about the country? Where was that? And it's going to be the same thing now. It won't matter who's there, Democrat all Democrat, House, Senate, they're not going to deal with the entitlements and Social Security because they haven't got any guts, and they're scared to death of Grover Norquist and his tax thing, scared to death of the AARP, scared to death of the Club for Growth, scared to death of the ACLU. That's your country.
Thank you very much, Senator, for what you say and what you stand for and all of you done for this country. It's been a pleasure to read about you and to hear you today. My name is Bill Schluter. I'm not a student, obviously, at Rutgers. I'm a former state senator here in New Jersey. And you answered the one question I had, and that was Citizens United. And associated with all of the things you've said is the fact that government has become dysfunctional. What do you think the chances are for a constitutional amendment to repeal Citizens United and McCutcheon and so on? And what do you think the chances are for our political parties to be reformed? How can we get a citizens' uprising to really change this dysfunctional government? And it's not only at the federal level, it's at the state level. I can verify that from experience. So those are rather broad questions, and appreciate your answers.
Tom Udall, who is the cousin of Mark Udall, who was defeated in Colorado, Tom is still there, put together a constitutional amendment, put it before the Judiciary Committee. I looked at it. He said, what do you think of this? You're not in the Senate, but will you do an op-ed piece? I said, I will, and you got to read it. This constitutional amendment is about that big, and it just throws all this stuff back to the states. It says if a state wants to do this about government sponsorship of elections or whatever, is very careful with one line at the bottom that it doesn't impede journalism or the First Amendment right for journalists and the media, which is critical because you don't want to get into that. So I think there's a good chance that it's drafted and it's out there, and the Republicans aren't going to touch it right now, but when they see what happens when Elizabeth Warren picks up 2 checks for 50 mil, well, they might think again. You never know what's going to happen. But that's what's going to terrify the American public. It's going to be not there. It's going to be not, who is this? How did this guy get this kind of bucks? How do we get this for our side? So I think that's going to happen. And the things that will change America will be at the ballot box. And when people get up and say, I can do this without touching anything, just say you're a liar. Why don't you go back and, if you just came here to pander, we don't need panders, we need patriots, so why don't you just go back and start over? Now, at that point, and don't forget this, 20 years from now, the sad part, and when you can knock on my box and ask me what happened, people are going to say, it all happened like they predicted. The Social Security went down the tube, didn't go down the tube, just it's not going to go away. America will not go away, but we won't be number one. And it all happened under whose watch? They'll say, you were there. You were there. You could have done something. Well, but that's too late. But it'll be a time for people who with the guts to, and who are able to work through the people who are cowed by the special interest groups who they run up ads to get money. I mean, you can't believe, well, you don't have to, you believe it, you see it every day. But anyway, it's going to come with the ballot box. It isn't going to come anywhere else, and the constitutional amendment will have to come from Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Senator. My name is Michael. I'm a senior at Rutgers. I'm just curious if the Obamacare can be saved, or whatever you want to call it, or is it just doomed to be a flawed system?
Well, I think it will be saved, but not in its present form. Yeah. As they begin to watch it, and the Supreme Court now is dealing with a heavy issue on subsidies of it, and they're really messing with politics in that one, because you'd be surprised that they'd reach out to bring a case like that to the Supreme Court unless they were going to do something to disable it or hurt it. The House will vote again and again and again as a straight repeal, and the Senate will not. And guys like Lamar Alexander and Lindsey Graham and other people will say, how do we fix this thing? And watch the chairman of the Budget Committee. That's going to be, I hope, Mike Enzi of Wyoming. He is a moderate, doesn't agree on the social issues, let me tell you, gang, as soon as we give up that Republican test of purity, we'll do a hell of a lot better. And I've always said abortion has got to be the worst thing I can imagine, sitting around the living room talking about that and what to do about it, but it's a deeply intimate and personal decision, and it shouldn't be part of a platform. Also, the gay-lesbian issues. I talk to young people, they don't give a damn about that issue. It's some old crank homophobe, you know, like God. I like them, but I don't like what they do. I said, well, I said, you ever hear what heterosexuals do? It was not, it was, if my wife were here, she'd stop me right now. They think fellatio and cunnilingus are two Etruscan sculptors, for God's sake. Now, where were we? Oh, I'm slipping back. Now, so that issue is done, and I think it's great for the country, so we can forget that. And so, I don't know if I answered your question, but I certainly slipped off the rail. I think that is my wife calling. She said you didn't do that one again. Well, I'll cleanse myself now if I can. Take a little yoga. Oh, let me tell you a quick one about that. I'll take all the questions, stick around. This is quick, 30 seconds. Guy's in the gym, 60 years old plus, working on his abs and his arms so he can go troll with the dollies. In comes this nice-looking gal in the yoga outfit, and he went over to the trainer. He said, "What machine should I get on to really impress her?" And he said, "The ATM." Now go ahead. Did I answer your question, at least partially? Partially?
Close.
Close.
Yeah, and one more thing, why was the single payer option ever considered? Because they use it in Europe all the time, and it seems to have great success.
I know it, and they're all things that have been considered, and nobody would come up. But you see, the problem is the Congress doesn't understand any of that. If you handed a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement to 95% of the people in Congress, they wouldn't know what either one of them were. So how are they supposed to discern a bill that was 2,500 pages long, which nobody knew what was in it? And now they're going to find out. The costs are accumulating in one area, and they're down in one. Well, you go in and correct the exchanges and the subsidies as it happens and tool it and get in bipartisan way, and I think you're going to do that because you remember, here's one for you, the medical device tax. They're going to repeal that. Well, are you interested in taking Medtronic and Stryker off the hook so you can pay it? Get serious.
Thank you.
You're taking a burden off of some of the biggest cats in America, the medical device people, and taking a whole 2.5% to fund the whole system and dumping it back on us. Sounds great. I never knew how it got that far. I know what does Medtronic and Stryker and all of them need? I don't know what they need. I know what their balance reports and balance sheets are. That'll get you in a lot of trouble.
Thank you for taking
Yeah, thank you for your bright thoughts, really.
Nice to meet you, sir. My name is Matthew. I'm a Rutgers alumni and the Young Republican chair in this county. And my question to you is about the terrorist attacks in Libya.
About the what?
The terrorist attack in Benghazi, Libya.
The
terrorist attack in Benghazi, Libya.
Yes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
President Obama and Susan Rice said it was a YouTube video. And recently, Hillary Clinton, it was written in her biography that she stepped down from being the Secretary of State because she was asked to lie. She had intelligence that it was a terrorist attack that day, and that he told her that we're going to lose the election if this gets out. It's going to make my reputation weak and Romney will win. And they sent people out to tell another story. And the result was the YouTube video was seen by the Muslim world, and 30 other countries rebelled against our embassies after that. What do you know about this situation? Because she may run for president in 2016. And what is the truth? And is he guilty of anything? And if so, how is he allowed to get away with it?
Well, I personally don't have any greater knowledge than most citizens, but if Hillary runs, it will be hung around her neck like an anchor the whole way. Whether it's right or not to do that, it will. And there are people we're never going to forget. But I was on the Iraq study group, and we had people come say, oh, I tell you whose fault this was and whose fault this was. Finally, we just said, we don't give a damn whose fault it was. We got to move on. What do we do now? And I think with that one, for me, it's what do we do now, not how many you can dig up, but for her and the people like you who are out there, you're not going to forget, and she's going to have to wade through that, as is Susan Rice. And I frankly think the president is ill-served right now with Valerie Jarrett. She is an arrogant person, and she is the gatekeeper, and I don't think the president realizes how many people she has offended.
Thank you for your very interesting talk. My name is Len Gursky. I'd like your opinion on term limits for the Senate and the House, and do you think it could contribute to breaking the deadlock? And thirdly, do you ever think it's a possibility?
I tell you, at one time I was in favor of that, and I'm no longer in favor of it because of one reason. There are people in Washington called civil servant people. They're there until they wake up some morning kissing a goat, and they might get rid of them, but you can't get rid of them, and they're just waiting for the next guy to come. So they're term limiting now. Well, send us a new one. Send us this jerk from Wyoming for 5 years or 4, and we'll outwit him too, or her, because they are stuck with the same view of the EPA or the government or the GSA, whatever they've been working with 30, 40 years, and they're there. And they will have an oversight hearing, and they'll say, I promise you, Senator, we're going to take care of this. And then they go back to their office and say, he'll be gone. And let me tell you, the only ones that can make a dent are, whether you like them or not, are guys that have been around and seen, Leahy. I don't always agree with Leahy, but he knows where the bones are buried. And so does McConnell. And so do some of the people who've been there 10, 20, or 30 years. But let me tell you, as long as you have the protections of the civil service situation and people can protect themselves for almost anything, and they're just waiting for the next guy to come. Well, I want to do something on coal-fired plants. Well, good, we're going to do that. And then, he's gone. And I don't think it will work at all. I think they just would wait. I think the best thing would be 1 6-year term for the president.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a freshman here. My name is Eli, and I really admire your insistence that what we need is a president or leadership that isn't afraid to take on issues that have become taboo in the country. Do you think that there's like taking on Social Security, looking at eliminating dross in our infrastructure? Do you think that there's
what was that? I had a mortar platoon in the Army. It was bad business. Go ahead.
I guess I'll just, basically my question is there a candidate right now who you think could take on topics in Washington that are not being talked about? So not just another fake maverick playing the role, but somebody who would actually, on either side, take on the real politics.
I don't see anybody on either party that would even be there, just because of the lay of the land. They're not going to deal with, as I say, don't forget, all the anguish we're going through right now isn't dealing with 2/3 of the American budget. And people say, well, wait a minute, what are they talking about then? Well, they're talking about everything but the entitlements and Social Security, which is where the bucks are. Tons of bucks, billions of bucks. And they're not going to touch it. And those groups are waiting for them to touch it. And they'll be there, and they're tough, and they'll take you out. And then don't forget how this has happened. If you're a Democrat and you talk about entitlement reform and doing something, then you're going to be accused of hurting old people and gypping people and all this. And then somebody will say, we're going to put a primary opponent in there against you, Queenie, you're going to shape up or you're going to be out of here. Over on the right, you got a guy talking about tax reform, even through the tax system, or revenue. Grover Norquist will call you, ride in his white robes with the Club for Growth and take you, say you want a primary opponent, and so guess what? They're safe. Those people get there and they're safe. They haven't alienated their base and they don't give a damn. They just stick it wherever they like to stick it. And the poor old centrists just wander around on it.
It's not realistic.
Yeah, it is.
It's not realistic to consider it. But if there was a candidate, anybody in politics, who would you want to see running for office? Even if there was some kind of George McGovern crash and burn candidacy.
George McGovern was a dear friend of mine, and somebody got up. He was at the University of Wyoming. He said, "You were a big liberal, weren't you, George? Kind of a commie." Yeah, he said I was, except I flew 37 missions over Italy into Germany, and you'd be speaking German without me, pal, so stick that up your nose. And I'll tell you one, Jeb Bush. He's got a brain, and he's used it. And it's unfortunate because he'll be tied to his brother and all that. But the real issue is, who do you want with a brain, who studies things, not just goes to a microphone and gets people all worked up. Those people are fake. And you know them. They're all day long, you see them. They can't do a 20-minute show on television because they're only programmed for 5 minutes of little bites. They're just zeros. But anyway, there are people out there. But if you're asking me to pick somebody with the intellectual capacity, forget all the reasons why it would be tough, it would be Jeb Bush.
Thank you.
Senator, we have about 5 minutes left. Would you like the 3 last questions to come forward and then answer them at once? Would that work?
Where do I have to go? You're trying to get rid of me, huh? Would you sit down, please? Oh, Randy. I'll take these 3 quickly. I promise. It depends on how short my answers are. Yes, go ahead.
Senator, my name is Marcy Feldheim. I'm a graduate of Douglas. I majored in political science. I ran for mayor in a local town. I've been active in any way I possibly can. And my concern is that most people do not have the vision and the understanding of the way our system works, the way you do. And therefore, they don't, without the inner knowledge, they are kept from acting. As a senior citizen, I get 6, 7, 8 mailings for surveys and requests, whether it is regarding the Medicare Affordable Act amendment to the Constitution, Citizens United. And everything is, yes, yes, answer the questions and send the money, okay? At this point, my concern is, how do we educate not just the young people, but we keep the community informed, because you cannot trust the media. So what do we do?
Well, you read what you can. Let's try to be balanced. You could read The Economist. What people are doing now is picking the media outlet that pleases them. Mm-hmm. If they're Fox people, they're never going to watch it. And if they're MSNBC people, they aren't going to watch it. So they're stuck. Rush Limbaugh, and Rachel Maddow, and then they can seethe all day long. That's a good thing. Seethe, I prefer to stay with the seekers instead of the seethers. But anyway, I can't answer those questions except this wonderful lady here, Betty Wold Johnson, and I were talking at breakfast. They've forgotten a course called civics. Civics, Betty, remember we talked about civics. That was a class. And you learned about your government, the 3 branches, what they do, the history of America, the media. Don't forget, when they did this miracle in Pennsylvania, they never allowed the media within 100 yards of the building. Why? so they could get something done without all the crap that comes out of a meeting. Well, isn't that secret? I said, yeah, it is. Because if it isn't a secret, it's just take a little piece of it and blow it all to bits. And so out of guilt after they'd done that terrible thing, they put the First Amendment on the books to take care of some goofy guy in a basement in Philadelphia cranking out seditious literature to protect him or her. And that was a good thing. But, you know, I don't, you know, if they, don't forget what Jefferson said, if you took government without newspapers and newspapers without government, he wouldn't hesitate to support the one. And then you left off the other part. It said, but they must be able to read and understand them. And nobody does that. The most read publication is People. Second is Us. And then the National Enquirer is doing pretty well. I mean, you know, that's America.
However, sir,
Yes.
Hearing you say for the first time, the power of the civil servant in Washington was an eye-opener. And I don't think that most people know how much is controlled by them.
You can't prove a thing unless it's a total aberrational act to get rid of a civil servant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Brian. I'm a junior here at Rutgers. And do you think the lack of voting... Okay, sorry. Do you think the lack of voting has caused this polarization of the parties and the gridlock in Congress? And if so, to help this lack of people voting, do you think we should adopt a system like Australia where people get fined if they don't vote?
Well, in America, if you tried to pull that out now and fine people for not voting, they'd say, this is America. I don't need anybody telling me that. And you can't force me to vote because I think they're all jerks. And I intend to show them, and I think it's a real mistake. And people would come up to me and bitch and whine. I'd say, do you vote? No, I don't. I don't want to encourage them. And then I would say as gently as I could, well then, pal, here. I don't have to answer your question. So, you know, you can't force people to vote, but you can go work like a dog to get them out to vote, and that's what the Eagleton Institute does with its policies. Get people alarmed, get them to vote. And maybe I didn't hear the whole question, but you talked about Australia and the finding. Yeah.
Oh yeah, what do you think would be a better solution for pushing people to vote?
You're not going to have it. The better solution, it's not going to be a third party anywhere, but the independents are going to get more and more, but they're going to side with somebody.
Yeah.
They may be independent, but they like the Democrats better than the Republicans, so that's fine with me, but we'll never have a third party here. I remember I was in Orange County, and some guy got up and said, how do we get this horny draft dodging Clinton or President of the United States? And mumbled and gasped and giving off BO. And I said, it's because 26% of you in this room voted for Ross Perot, bonehead, so don't give me any crap. And they went, oh, yeah, well, I've forgotten that. Anyway, enough of that. I'm a smart ass again. I've done it before. No, that didn't answer your question. It did. I just would never have anything to force voting. You won't ever have it.
Okay.
It's your job as a precinct committee to go get them and get them to vote. That's your job. And I'll take that. So I hope that answers that. And now, one guy snuck in, and I'll take him too, but quit. You were first to raise your hand. I'm going to get to you. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Sandy Efron. First of all, thank you for today and for your public service. You addressed the fiscal issues. How would you address in terms of climate change? In particular, what looks obvious to me is something like a carbon tax. I know that politics would be very tough on that, but how do you address that? And first of all, in terms of it being real, what is your thoughts and the thoughts that you think in terms of Congress believing that it's real? How does that fit in?
Well, you see, now I should have left. Let me tell you, if Wyoming were a country, we would be the largest coal-producing country on Earth. 430 million tons of surface coal a year, low sulfur, filled with water, sent all over the United States. What are you doing here, Ruth? I know, I just wanted, this guy in the white shirt was the first guy to raise his hand. I'm going to get to.
I just don't want you to miss your plane.
No, I don't. I want to get out of here, but especially after this question. I believe climate change is real. I do not believe that man has caused all of it.
And you do, in terms of
I
carbon
believe
tax?
it's very real, and I believe there are cycles of cold and heat. Wyoming was once a desert sea, well, a desert and a sea, both. And I think man is certainly, but if you're telling me that you get rid of all coal while all these other alternative things are 6% of the national energy, have a drink. You can't get there with biomass or wind or anything like that and corn. What the hell are you putting corn in a gas tank when it's the most stable food for the poorest people on earth? Get rid of it. But man is involved in this thing, but man alone is not the fault of climate change. And just to address things in the auto industry and America as we know it, while China is over there playing the big belcher and the rest of them don't give a damn, that's not going to happen. And the Kyoto Treaty, and you Republican bastards, the Kyoto Treaty lost 96-0. Carl Levin led the charge, and Dingell, because they're from Detroit. So you have a choice. And I believe in climate change. I believe every bit of me that it's there, and I believe man has certainly contributed, but I don't know to what degree. Stupid? Yeah, maybe, but that's me.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, now. I'm waiting for this one. This is the one I fear most of all.
My name is Bob Wheatus, and I've heard both Congresses talked about tax reform, but is there anything going to come of it? And are there going to be substantial reforms in a tax reform program?
Well, let me tell you, so that you get this one, we were stunned. Ruth is here, and I'm going to make this because I want to get to the door. You heard his question? Tax reform. When we got into that issue, we found 180, did I mention this before? We found 180 things in the tax code, 180 things that cost, they were deductions, loopholes, credits, and they cost $1.1 trillion a year. What are they? Oh, home mortgage interest deduction, employer deduction, employee health care, Blue Cross Blue Shield, oil and gas depletion allowance, all of it, wonderful stuff, okay? And we said, get rid of them all. Just get rid of them. They cost $1.1 trillion, and then give people what they've been asking for. 0 to 70 grand income, you pay 8%. From 70 grand to 210, you pay 14. Everything over that, you pay 23. Take the corporate rate to 26 from 36 and go to a territorial system where you can bring the bucks back without getting taxed twice. And that's what we said. Now, let me tell you the other one. Only 20% of the American people use 80% of the tax code. Who are those people? Get your hand up. Only 20% of the American people use 80% of the stuff in the tax code. And only 25% of our fellow citizens itemize, so 75% of our fellow citizens don't even know what's in the tax code. And is that fair? Hell no. Now that's where we are. What I have found is that we need something from Wyoming called bag balm. You use it, you apply it to the extremities of the bovine members of the quadrupeds, and the sun shines on the snow. This lasts just 30 more seconds. The sun shines on the snow, and it gets on the udder and cracks the udder, and the calf comes to nurse, and the cow kicks the calf in the head, and you put on bag balm, lots of bag balm, dollops of bag balm. They say, why is that on your desk? I said, because if America has become a milk cow with 330 million tits, we need all the bag balm we can produce.